digital ID, which will definitely invade your privacy and your cybersecurity, but at least there's no secret plan to insert microchips under our skin like conspiracy theorists warned years ago. Oh no! We talk a lot about advanced ideas that seem sometimes to be implausible and ridiculous, but after the pandemic period, many of us have become more open to the notion that there might be plans to introduce regulatory measures that seem like they're more from science fiction than political fact. But the European Parliament have just established in principle the introduction of a Europe-wide digital ID. This will be connected to CBDCs, that means digital currencies. Remember when digital currencies were bad, when they were Bitcoin, when they were offline and difficult to control and a bit off-grid? They're bad for the environment, someone's going to hurt themselves. Well, now that they're organising it themselves from the United States to across Europe, suddenly they're okay. But more worrying than any of that is the introduction of measures to be able to observe us, control us, shut us down, and even something like universal credit, which I've heard people talk positively about, could be used as a measure to impose more control. But to get us into this subject, let's have a look at Dutch MEP Rob Roos, who you may remember from when he confronted a Pfizer employee about whether or not there'd been clinical trials around transmission, and the results were interesting, but on YouTube I'll have to hold back what I reveal. Here is Rob Roos. He's just come out of a meeting. He's all sort of like, it's too late, guys. It's the end of the world now. It's the Matrix, man. I should have not left Morpheus in that chamber next to the lavatory.
I just left the room where we had the negotiations about the digital identity, and I have bad news. The member states and the European Parliament came to an agreement. It means that probably not far from now, the digital identity will be a fact in the European Union. Right after this agreement, Commissioner Breton said, now we have the digital identity wallet, we have to put something in it. And what he meant was the digital euro, also known as the central bank digital currency. This is a very bad development.
One of the defining myths of our culture is progressivism. Things are improving. Post-Enlightenment, things have been improving more broadly. Many of you might be thinking, sensing, feeling deep inside yourself that in conjunction with evident and obvious progress in technology and medicine, there's been a kind of a decline, a deterioration, something that's difficult to define and perhaps exists in the realm of the spirit. Notice how these ideas were first of all spoken of as, as with any potential scientific or technological project, I suppose, as pie in the sky potentialities, and now they're being introduced in quite a gentle way. And in the pandemic we discussed, didn't we, the possibility of like vaccine passports. That was discussed, and I think because of independent media, many of these ideas received a lot of pushback and resistance. What I would ask you to be observant of is the possibility that once these ideas are discussed, presented to you, and somewhat normalized by the media, you'll see a bunch of stuff normalizing it in the coming weeks and months, I imagine. I can predict this now. Let me know in the chat when you see it. What will happen is a situation will occur, and this is not conspiracy theory. I'm not saying that it'll be a false flag event, or whatever. I'm just saying because of the way things are, there will be a war, there will be a pandemic, there will be an event, and during that event, they're going to say, obviously now we're going to have to use that digital ID thing we've been discussing, and we're going to have to advance that because it's not safe now. Remember how close we came in the pandemic to, in order to go to concerts, you're going to have had this medication. Now you know that it didn't prevent transmission. Now there's so many things, I'm not going to rehash all of that stuff now. What I'm saying is that any measure that ultimately affords centralized authority a greater ability to control you, to control your movements, to control your transactions, to control your finances, is ultimately not going to be in your service. That's why I think we live in such a polemicized and conflagratory time, a time of conflict, because most people in the back of their minds think, well, as long as these measures are only applied to the people I don't like, I'm kind of glad. Yeah, I don't mind if you cancel or silence those. I've never liked those people anyway. But once the principle is established, it's difficult to predict how it might. Well, it's not difficult to predict. I'm going to predict it will be deployed in order to centralize authority and shut down any dissent towards the establishment.
They always promise us not to make this connection. And even a lot of experts, privacy experts and security experts, warned also last week this is a very bad idea for our privacy and our freedom.